And we're live.
We're live and we need that music.
Two vets, two different worlds, one badass show. Center Mass with Rob and Silent J, blowing your mind away on the Vets on Media Network.
Okay, hello everybody, and welcome back to Center Mass with Rob and Silent J. I'm Rob.
I am Silent J.
And thank you very much for joining us this evening on this nicely titled episode, Fox and Friends. It is called Fox and Friends because today was a pretty big day. So we had, Joe and I, if you're brand new to the show, or Vets on Media, or wherever you're picking this up, Joe and I both met because of Tactical 16. We've gone over in this show and my show and his show about, what Tactical 16 is and exactly how that happened. Long story short, Joe had been with Tactical 16 for a long time, and he had been hosting Tactical 16 radio for quite a while. I published a book, Love Me When I'm Gone. I was doing some publicity stuff. I got on the Tactical 16 radio show. Joe and I fell madly in love with each other, and in the most non-homosexual way possible. And then Eric Shaw, who is the CEO of Tactical 16, another hetero bromance came about, and I came on board. So I've been on the Tactical 16 team for a few years. Tactical 16 was kind of born when Eric published his book. And then I'm still not clear on exactly how it happened, but somehow he's Forrest Gumped his way onto Fox News, and that just changed the whole life of Tactical 16 and kind of pushed them forward, pushed his business forward, and then created a lot of different things. Well, as it turns out, Fox News called Eric back and said, "Hey, we'd like to have you back on. We want to have one of your authors," and I guess the sun was smiling on this dog's ass that day because for some reason Eric decided to call me out of all the great Tactical 16 authors that are out there, and he asked me if I could appear on Fox News with him. And so that's what we did today. It was pretty cool. I got my ass up a little bit earlier than usual and drove halfway across town. Thankfully, on Sunday, there's not a lot of traffic in L.A. Went to a studio, and Eric and I both recorded on, we were on Fox News this morning at 10:50 Pacific Standard Time and 1:50 Eastern Standard Time. So that was pretty cool because I've done a lot of radio. I've done some pretty big shows before, but nothing in that league. I mean, that's really the big league. So that was a pretty cool day, man. That was a pretty cool event for me. It definitely made my day a little bit nicer. And Jay came up with a nickname for me. And I've going through the military, playing football my whole life, playing lacrosse all the way through college. I've had my share of nicknames. So I'm never shy about getting a new one. I tell everybody, because I went by the name Patrick until I was in high school, my middle name, and then the name Rob for everybody who knows me college, and then on. People ask me what I prefer to be called. They just say, just lob something in my general direction. I'll probably answer to it because I've got so many nicknames. I just don't know, I don't know anymore. Just look at me and say something, I'm going to respond. So I'm very interested to hear.
Well,
Hey, what's my nickname?
I was going to call you Hollywood Rob because of the interview today, and you looked very Hollywood-esque. Your hair looked good.
Well, that's not hot. It's just nice grooming.
Listen, my hair is I need to do a lot of work on it. So you had a good head of hair. I was going to call you Hollywood Rob, and then I noticed something during the interview. Hollywood Rob, which lasted in my mind for a day and a half, it looked like glitter on his face, and I wasn't the only one that noticed it. A couple friends of ours also noticed it, and the family that I was sitting down watching the interview with. So I was going to call him Gary Glitter, but I'm like, no, that's not a good thing anymore because Gary Glitter was busted doing some undesirable things. So I came up with, because since we are an international show, Barilo. It's sparkles in Portuguese.
I can live with that. I think I could even live with Hollywood.
Glitter. Maybe it's glitter. Yeah, not sparkles. Sparkles in Portuguese is sparkles. So.
In all honesty, I was a little worried because I know that's my big thing. So we got sent a bunch of pictures from the interview from people that took screenshots of the the broadcast, and other people who took pictures of the cell phones, and I was a little worried because, like, under my caption I wrote, former Special Forces guy, and I was honestly kind of worried because I knew that would be kind of the, what I'd be portraying, former Green Beret author, all that good stuff. And I've done a lot of radio, but not a lot of TV, and I was honestly kind of worried that they were going to try and put makeup on me. And that was just like, I was going over like the whole ride in my head. It took me like 45 minutes to get there. And the whole drive I was like, I'm not wearing fucking makeup. I'm not wearing makeup. I'm not going to wear makeup. Because I've heard Corolla talk about it, how they like cake on all this makeup so you look, and
another guy that talks about that, Joe Rogan. He did it one time when he's like, I'm never doing that again. I am who I am,
Well, I think and he's not an attractive guy either. Joe Rogan looks like a catcher's mitt, and I kind of look like a catcher's mitt. But thankfully, so a lot of my female friends, that was the text messages, when you get done with something like that, your phone, I had to leave my phone in the other room before I went on, left all my stuff in there, and I started just getting this onslaught. My phone died on the way home. I mean, it was like fully charged when I got there, but I was getting so many Facebook, Twitter, and text messages, my phone just died on the way home. But at least 30 women were texting me and said, the camera is very nice to you. And I was like, what does that mean? They're like, you look really good on air. And I was like, does that mean I'm ugly in person?
You look good. One thing somebody picked up on at the end, you said, God bless America. And I had posted a picture of you and all that stuff. And what I did was I had somebody comment, and I said, God bless America. And I'm like, what was that? I called the person up. I'm like, what was that? They're like, oh, that's the last thing Rob said. Well, Robert Johnson picked up on it as well. And I think we'll keep talking, but I think we got Dave Peters. Dave, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Nice to have you on. We're gonna do a little intro about you, but not to cut off our wonderful story of Rob being on not just national news, but international news, because we are international superstars of the internet. If we have David Peters on, he is actually Tactical 16's latest author. His book just came out a week and a half ago, I believe, and another Texas author. I
can't have enough of them, and that's awesome.
Because now there's Dave Peters, there's Rob Lewis, there's Justin Jordan, there's Chris Hernandez, all authors from Texas. And I seriously think Eric Shaw has a love affair of men in uniform from Texas who write books. So either that or just Texas is the cream of the crop for writing a good book.
There you go. Well, I think it's just the cream of the crop in general.
Being a nice New Yorker, I disagree. So, but Dave Peters is our newest author, latest author, and his book is titled Death Letter: God, Sex, and War. And I saw that title, and I was kind of confused because I'm like, I thought our next author was going to be a chaplain, and Dave and I had a conversation about a week ago, and it turns out Dave actually is a chaplain in the Army Reserves, and so we had a really good talk, and I'm glad he's on, and we could talk a little bit more about the book, and then Rob and Dave could just talk about Texas, and I'll fade away.
It's amazing how long that could last.
Yes.
So, Dave, I got to tell you, that was one of my first worries when Joe told me, hey, we're going to have a chaplain on. I went, oh, great, that means no F-bombs. And he said, oh, no, he's a Marine from Texas. And I went, oh, okay. So that's an interesting thing. What's that?
That's where I got my start, yes, in the Marine Corps.
And so you're from Texas? Are you still living in Texas? I think Joe said you're actually in my neck of the woods now.
Yes, I'm here for 3 days in California, but I normally reside in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. I went to college in Austin. I lived in Austin for about 5 years, and that's my favorite town in the world. I've been all over the world, and I think Austin really is the best place in the world. So that's amazing. How'd you end up there? Are you from Texas originally before you went into the Marine Corps, or is that just a place that you ended up?
No, I was born in Pennsylvania and joined the Marine Corps from there. And then first time in Texas, I went there for seminary in the 90s. And then when I was assigned as a chaplain in 2004, right after the invasion of Iraq, I was assigned to Fort Hood as my first duty station. That's when I became a Texan off and on for the next 8 or so years, till I finally moved there about 2 years ago, permanently.
So that right there has got to be a pretty interesting thing. If you were, you were stationed at Fort Hood after the Iraq invasion, were you there when the incident happened with the Muslim psychiatrist?
With the Muslim, what was it again?
The guy that went on the rampage on Fort Hood, the guy that was a psychiatrist or psychologist that walked in with a pistol and shot everybody preparing to deploy?
Yeah, Nadal Hassan was an Army psychiatrist. He actually, we overlapped time at Walter Reed together when I was serving there, but I was not at Fort Hood when that shooting happened, and I was at Walter Reed taking care of the amputees and the psych ward at Walter Reed during that time. But it was a devastating event for the whole Army and really the whole nation.
Yeah, it was, and it's still, it's still ongoing. Last I heard, they were still having issues where they were calling it workplace violence, and that, it created some kind of issues where the families of the people that were killed and injured weren't getting the type of benefits you should get from the military. I still don't understand why they did that. It's a very interesting
responses to a tragedy like that, to a mass murder, to a killing like that, where he went on a shooting spree and shot a lot of people and killed a lot of people and wounded a lot of others. And the response to that event at Fort Hood, I was not there at Fort Hood at the time, but I'm stationed there now, and that community is still dealing with that. And then, of course, the most recent shooting happened just a few months ago. And as a chaplain, I go in and do pastoral care. I go and be with the families. I'm with the victims, sometimes with the perpetrators of events too, and be there for people and to hear their stories. And I got to be there with some of the folks that were shot from the last shooting while I was assigned there, and see their battle buddies coming in. Most of these were very young soldiers that were shot, and to listen to them and just to see that camaraderie. I'd almost forgotten about some of that, being 19 and 20 and 21 in a motor pool, turning wrenches all day in the hot Texas sun, and the kind of close relationships that happen. And when someone dies, that hole is just enormous. It's a big gaping hole in a unit and in a person's life. And I think the Army's dealing with a lot of those gaping holes right now.
Yeah, and with being a chaplain, you look at things, or you have to deal with things a little bit differently than somebody in Rob's position when he was in the military, somebody in my position now. What are the challenges? Because I've been close to a few chaplains, but for different reasons. They tried to save me. What are some of the unique challenges that you face that's not on like a theological level or a spiritual level, but just as one, you're an officer in the Army. How do you combine being a man of faith and then also being in a leadership role and somebody that everybody may turn to, doesn't matter what rank they are?
Yeah, chaplains are really a unique part of the military. They were there right at the very beginning in the 1700s with General Washington appointing chaplains for his units. But the chaplain corps has always been ordained clergy from the religious denominations in America. We represent every single denomination and different religions as well. We have Hindu chaplains, Buddhist chaplains, Muslim chaplains. We represent the diversity of the Army because we've got every one of those soldiers in the Army. Mm-hmm. But we also serve as staff officers to the commander. We advise the commander on morale, ethics, and we also are there for all ranks. Chaplains wear a rank in the middle of our chest, but we go by chaplain no matter what rank we are. If we're a 2-star general, which is the highest chaplain rank, or we're a lieutenant, we're chaplain no matter what. Because we fill a different role. We're not there with command authority. We're not there with any kind of UCMJ authority. We are there with spiritual authority, which goes to the heart of what it means to be a soldier, to get through tough times. That's spiritual fitness that everyone has to have, regardless of their faith background, religion, or really preference to not have a religion, which is a large group of soldiers in all branches.
Now, I've got to ask a question. Sorry, I've got to ask a question here, and this may seem a little bit goofy, but it's an honest question that I've had in the back of my mind for a long time. I remember going to infantry basic training, and our drill instructors, you had that thing during basic training where you could get away and go to service. If you were a religious person, I went to Catholic Mass, you could go to whatever, and I remember them making a very solid, a very specific point that, you could go to any denomination you wanted to, even if you were Wiccan. And I thought in the back of my head, like, that's strange. So that idea that we have, priests for basically, you have chaplains for every type of religion that's out there. Are there any Wiccan, I don't know what they would call themselves, but Wiccan, I don't know, voodoo masters or whatever they are that operate in the Army?
Well, there's a lot of what we call low-density faith groups in the Army. I'm speaking for the Army, and that's groups that are not, they don't have huge numbers, but they have enough to, like, say, at a large base to have a gathering of maybe 12, 15 people. And there's always been Wiccans in the Army since Wicca has been in America. What happens? They don't usually have chaplains. There aren't any Wiccan chaplains right now. But what they have is a lay leader or a distinctive faith group leader that kind of leads the group and leads in the rituals and that kind of thing. And the chaplains, we're there to ensure the freedom of every single soldier, no matter what religion they are, to worship in their own way or not to worship. That's one of our jobs, is to preserve that First Amendment right to freedom of religion, free speech, and to setting up a little room, a space for the Wiccans to meet is part of that freedom of expression. You're up in the ship's raining down on you, and you're in a situation where lives are on the line. The religion of the person next to you that's dragging the handle on the back of your vest to pull you out of a vehicle, it matters very little. And certainly when there's a unit formed and comes together, the religious backgrounds and ethnic backgrounds of soldiers are very, very, very minimal when it comes to the real stuff.
Yeah.
I found anyway.
That's a very good point. But it is, I'm libertarian, but I'm on the very conservative side of libertarians. I also listen to a lot of conspiracy theories just because you never know. It's one of those numbers games where I think out of every 100, maybe one has some accuracy. And there's one that was going around an awful lot last year, or maybe the year before, but I think it was last year, talking about Christian chaplains in the Army being discriminated against and not being able to practice and all these things. And I never really got to verify if there was any solid truth to that or if that was just propaganda. But they had said there was a lot of stuff going on where Christian chaplains were being heavily discriminated in the military. Was there any truth to that?
Yeah, I remember getting a lot of emails from people who are really concerned about that. Usually devout Christians who are getting emails or reading posts and saying that this was happening. And I can only speak from my own experience. I know the Chief of Chaplains has put out a statement about that very subject, about the ability to pray in Jesus' name, which for many Christians is a distinctive of their religion. And I'm a Christian chaplain, so I pray at public events, and I pray in all kinds of places. Before missions, I pray in hospital rooms and in the barracks, you name it. I've prayed there probably. I've prayed all over the place. And one of the things there's a distinction between times when a soldier is forced to listen to a chaplain, for instance, the end-of-day formation. And this was a common practice in the Civil War, to bring the chaplain out for a little groups and enjoy that. And so the chaplain corps is always saying, when your soldiers are forced to listen to you, that's when a real sensitive place to not push the chaplain's religion on the soldier. And that's I hold the soldier's faith sacred. I'm not in the Army to make a whole bunch of people sound like me or look like me or act like me. I'm there to help them and nurture the living. That's one of our core missions of the Chaplain Corps, is to nurture the living. Whatever gives you strength is what we want to encourage in your life. So to proselytize, to try to convert people when they're forced to attend an event, boy, that sounds pretty horrible. And I'd hate to have that happen to me. And that's probably happened to me a few times in my life, where people tried to shove their agenda on me when I was just standing in formation, required to be there. So I think that's one thing that I think a lot of people in public don't realize, is that soldiers are forced to listen to officers and NCOs speak all the time. And so those are the times where you have to be a little extra careful about what you're telling people to think and believe. Now, in public worship services where people are voluntarily attending, or spiritual studies or spiritual fitness runs or whatever the chaplain's doing, that's a voluntary event, a funeral. I mean, chaplains, we say whatever in the pulpit of our churches back home, and there's never been a case where that kind of speech has ever been censored or anything like that. But to me, it's about freedom. I mean, boy, I've had to stand in a million formations in the hot sun or in the cold, and there's something about that power relationship that you want people to preserve your right to be a person, as well as get the information out to you. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does.
Pretty good. Going into your book,
yes, the book.
The book. The only reason why you're here. No, Dave, I'm joking. You're an awesome guy.
I remember a book. Yes.
Yeah. Where did you get? Because I told you I haven't read it yet. But I will as soon as I'm done with my book, because I don't want to. I don't want to be
plagiarized.
Yeah, plagiarized. Like the time I was a chaplain in 03, people are
careful about what I read when I'm writing something. If it sounds like it might be too similar to what I'm actually trying to write.
Yeah, and I start going into it. The time I was a chaplain in 03, people are going to see the BS right through that. Like he had Article 15 in 03, not a chaplain rank. Where did you get the initial thought of taking your thoughts and putting it into a book form, and then where'd you get the title from? Because that, I think, I've read the synopsis about the book and the stuff that you sent me, and I read the reviews on Amazon. Just the title of the book is, in my opinion, is everything, and you have a title that I would stop and check out if I knew nothing about the book at all.
Yeah, it's good to hear. The title Death Letter came from really an experience I had. I was cleaning out a box of old love letters from my ex-wife, and just memorabilia when I was about to move to a smaller apartment right after my divorce, after I came back from Iraq. So a whole series of things happened where I lost. And I was just really upside down. And I remember I found this sealed envelope, and it was my death letter. I'd written it in Iraq when I first got there on some Red Cross stationery. I sealed it up when I opened upon the unfortunate death of David W. Peters. I just kind of maybe comedically written that or something. And I put it in my wall locker in the back of it, and then, started going on missions and convoys all over Baghdad, and right when the Civil War was starting. And, I would just, I was ready to die. I thought that was going to be a pretty normal experience over there. Be a big flash of boom and probably not even hear it, and it'd be over. And I remember finding this letter just about 2 years after I was in Iraq, or about a year and a half, and I read it, and it just didn't make any sense to me. I felt like the person who had written it right when he had arrived in Iraq didn't really exist anymore, and I needed to write a new one, because I still felt like I was going to die. I still felt like my life wasn't going to last very long. And lately I found out that's actually a symptom of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, where you feel like you have a foreshortened future, like you're not making long-term plans. And it's just one of those things that I think a lot of a lot of combat veterans feel. There's that line of death that I think we all have to cross in combat, where we accept the reality of our own death, where we say, yeah, if I die, I'm okay with it, and I'm going to be okay, and I can ride around the streets of Baghdad and walk down the alleyways and talk to people and be there, and I'm okay with that happening. It's probably it'll be out of my control. Many cases that the IED threat was just enormous there. The explosive form penetrators that were being used when this started to be used when I got there, and they could pierce a tank, and they could pierce right through the arm of a tank. So there wasn't a lot you could do if one of those shots got lucky. And so that's where I got the idea of Death Letter. It was a way of saying, this is how I feel in this moment, that I feel like I'm going to die, and I don't really want to live anymore. And so I need to write down my experiences and my thoughts so that people can hear what I'm saying. And then the God, Sex, and War part really came from a friend of mine, a psychiatrist that worked with soldiers at Walter Reed, and she had written to me that she sent me a novel, John Irving's Prayer for Me, which is about the Vietnam War. And she said, this is about your 3 favorite topics, God, Sex, and War. So I just kind of brought that into the Death Letter title, because really that God and sex and war, for me, all came together, and I've never been the same since. Those 3 experiences are kind of in the mythic realm of existence, in a place where we go and we're not really ourselves anymore. We're kind of living out these, what Carl Jung or somebody might call an archetype, where we're kind of bigger than ourselves, or larger than life. That's why these 3 subjects, like God, sex, and war, have caused so many problems in the world, and they've caused so much joy in the world. It's sort of an either or there. And I was living in the extremes of all 3 of those things, and so I thought I'd put that in the book, because that's what the book's about.
Nice. And for those that are watching this on Google Hangouts or YouTube, if you go, there's a new feature called Showcase, and I threw the link for your book from Amazon in there, and it's got the cover of the book and a description, and you could click on it, and you could go right to Amazon.com, where you can get the Kindle edition of the book. And so far, you got 5-star reviews. And
I got 1 4-star there.
I was talking about that.
If they're going to promote me directly to 4-star, I'm okay with that.
I was talking about that on Wednesday. I'm like, I understand giving somebody 1, 3, or 5 stars. It's like, it's bad, it's okay, it's great. 2 and 4 are for those really snobby people. Yeah. It's like hipsters drinking tea.
Sorry. Go ahead.
It's like there's people like, oh, I'm so good, I know to give this book a 2 stars out of 5. I don't know what 2 or 4 stars really means.
Are you on Goodreads yet? I think you guys just lost me. Hello, can you hear me?
You got to give the 5-star piece by Leo Tolstoy. The books that are still in print 400 years later. Maybe the Talmud or the Bible or whatever. Keep a 5-star handy. But yeah, the reviews have been good. People say that I start reading it and I can't stop reading it. So that's what I wanted. I kept the book fairly succinct and shorter than a lot of books about war, but I kept it in the moment. And I was scared to death to publish a book about sex. About my own sex life, which is what a lot of it's about, because I have a lot of shame about those issues, and boy, it brings it all up. But then I thought,
so you're Catholic?
Say again.
So you're Catholic?
Well, I grew up in a really traditional and really fundamentalist Christian tradition that was probably very similar to some Roman Catholic, but I didn't grow up Roman Catholic. But I think a lot of really conservative religions, even ones that aren't Christian, have a lot of the same views on sex. And I kept all the rules. I kept every single rule until one day the rules didn't keep me. I kept the law and the law broke me, and there I was, recent veteran, divorced with 2 kids, and had to figure out how to start living life. And I kept reading these biographies of combat veterans, and especially of chaplains. There was a few that hit the scene really early in the war, and they just glossed over, and that's fine if they did. They didn't have to. There's no rules about how you write a book.
Right.
But they glossed over that part of their life, their sexual life, their chaotic sexual life they had. And it was when I discovered an old World War I chaplain's book by Paul Tillich, who was a World War I chaplain in the German army on the losing side. And he had very similar experiences to what I was experiencing. And I said, boy, this story needs to get out. And I thought, well, no one's doing it. I waited, and I'm not going to be the first one to write it. So I had written it already and just kept it on ice. And one day, I realized nobody else was going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
None of the other chaplains are going to write about this stuff, even though they were telling me these stories. Again, I did an article for a book from Oxford, and it was all about chaplains and the changes in their spiritual lives, the way they saw God, the way they saw their spouse, and the way they saw sex, and the way they saw war was changed by their combat experience, but nobody was writing about it. I just thought, maybe I'll be the first one to try that and see what happens. And so far, every chaplain that has read it comes up to me and says, yeah, that's like what happened to me, or yeah, I felt that, or I saw that, and I thought that. And so it's a way of saying you're not alone. And that's one of the reasons I read books, is to know that I'm not alone. I'm not the only one to have a crazy experience, just as other people have had these things before.
Well, I'll tell you something. Being divorced with kids in the Army, you're just like me, and you're just like most everybody else I know in the military. So you are your flock, and you are your target audience with the book now.
Well,
so
I didn't think I was. I really didn't think I was when I joined the Army. I really thought I was better than everybody else because I kept the rules. I thought because I was Christian and God was on my side, and I thought I was faithful and I did everything right, and I went to the marriage seminars, and I taught the marriage seminars, and I did all these things. But I came back and my wife had a boyfriend, and I didn't know what to do. And suddenly I was just like every private, specialist, lieutenant, captain, major in the Army, and that was a really big shock for me because I was kind of a religious prick before that. I kind of thought that I could avoid some of the symptoms and problems of life if I just kept this. I think a lot of religious people, we have like a string of lucky charms around our neck. If we do this right, we do this right, we do this right, nothing bad will happen to us. And then suddenly life happens, real life happens, and you lose something. And it's like, what do I do now? And everything changes. God changes, sex changes, war changes, every last thing in life. And it was something that happened to me, and I thought, wow, it's kind of neat to be part of this community for real this time.
So what's your view on why that happens? There's obviously different religious explanations for things, and I know some people think, God puts these things in your way to test you or to test your faith, and then, other people think that that life has already been written out and we're just kind of living along this script that's already been determined, predestiny. Do you have any ideas like that on these trials and tribulations that you went through in your own personal life, or do you have the understanding that, well, it's just life and life happens and you're going along the road?
Yeah, I don't have the definitive answer on that one, but I know that whatever I believed in before I went to Iraq, I didn't believe it when I got back. And that was that I really thought that, what I just said, but also even deeper than that there was this way that God wanted me to do everything. And if I could figure out what God wanted me to do in every given circumstance, then I would be okay, and I would be blessed, and I would be happy and wonderful, and nothing bad would happen. So when that failed me, it was very much like God disappeared. Like God just disappeared. Like Jesus on the cross, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? And, I felt that. I felt that forsakenness, because I was like, hey, you want me to be married, right? And I want to stay married, and I was getting unmarried real fast. And I thought, God, you got to stop this. You can fix this. I know you can fix this. And nothing happened. Nothing. And I thought, there's no God. God disappeared or died or something. And, old Paul Tillich, that old Army chaplain from World War I, his quote was, the courage to live your life is found in the God that appears when God disappears in the anxiety of doubt and fear. So God, for me, disappeared, and ultimately a new view of God appeared in my life that was really different. And it's taken me a while to adjust to that. But I learned in my marriage that God didn't care about my marriage, but God cared about me, which is two different things. God didn't care about these institutions as much as he cared about me, which was totally different. And it took me a long time to accept that reality. But as far as the script of our lives, how it's written, I kind of come and go. On really bad days, I kind of think it's all just a big mess, and I don't know what to do, and I kind of cling to what I know. And on really good days when I'm feeling really happy, I feel like, yeah, there's a plan, and I'm following it. But it kind of comes and goes for me.
So would you say pre-divorce and pre-deployment, you had a kind of New Testament view of God, very nice and loving God, and then post-Iraq you had more of an Old Testament, wrathful, vengeful God sort of approach to life?
Yeah, I like how you say that, because I really think that war brings the Old Testament to life. Like, for instance, the Psalms of David, there's 150 Psalms in the Bible. And most of them are written by a combat veteran who was a king, also David, who, I mean, this is the craziness. This is where the God, sex, and war stuff really comes together. King David he's a young boy, killed Goliath, fantastic story or whatever, and he goes on and he's to marry the king's daughter as a reward, which is like every fairy tale, right? But in order to finally win the king's daughter, the king doesn't like him, so he says, I want you to kill a bunch of Philistines. He doesn't say I want you to kill a bunch of Philistines, I want you to go gather 300 foreskins of the Philistines. Now, there's only one way to get a foreskin from somebody. You pretty much have to get it through combat. And so he gathers these foreskins to present as his price of his bride to marry this girl, the king's daughter. And right there in this life, this is the guy that wrote the biggest chunk of the Old Testament, the Psalms, a man who engaged in hand-to-hand combat in hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of encounters, one-on-one with the enemy. So yeah, to me, war just brought the Old Testament right up in my face. But even the New Testament, there's a lot of war in that too. It's kind of reversed though. I know a lot of times as a part of an occupying army in Baghdad, I kind of felt like maybe like some of the Roman soldiers felt at times. We're a civilized country, an empire. We're going somewhere to enforce standards and rules, and the frustration of, why aren't people loving us more accepting of all these things? And certainly it really came together before convoys. A lot of times soldiers would say to me, like, oh, good, the chaplain's going with us. He's going to be riding in the third vehicle or whatever. And so nothing bad's going to happen to us. And I would always say, hey, the founder of my religion was killed 500 miles west of here by soldiers. So don't get your hopes up.
Not a good sign. Yeah. That's and I tell you, like, I used to have guys on my team. I was a medic, and so you'd have guys that go, Rob, I'm next to you. And, like, you got leaders that always wait, medic, you're with us. And I always have to grab him right before we headed out the door to go on the mission and go, hey, the medic always gets shot first, right? Okay, so, I'll be behind you.
I always wanted the medic. The last chaplain I had when I was overseas, he was from Texas. He was more concerned about
why did you just move into Texas, man? Come on. I think God is trying to tell you something.
Listen, God's telling me I need to go to a little island in the Pacific with a lighter and you know, show everybody the wonders of modern technology. We had a chaplain who was from Texas, and all he wanted to talk about was the Harley he was going to buy when he got back to the States. Yeah, he called it, and he still has it. It's called the Black Mamba. So
right.
It's like,
well, that's a good example of, you know, chaplains cope with they're just the way everybody else does. You escape in your mind. You numb yourself to the reality of death, and you become comfortable with death. And that's the thing that, you know, when I would say to soldiers, like, yeah, I can't guarantee anything that you're going to live or die or not get blown up or whatever, but I'll be here with you. Because I found out that soldiers weren't worried about dying as much as they were worried about being alone, because the intensity of the relationships in combat is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my whole life. And you know, that's the part that I miss about war, is that intensity of trust, that you know that someone's going to be there for you and they're going to die for you and kill for you. And that's a powerful thing that you just can't really find that anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's a very hard thing to come back to, because I can tell you personally, like that, you know, my life as a Green Beret, like it mirrored a lot of my younger life. I grew up in Texas playing football, played lacrosse. I was an athlete all the way through college, where we had these very tight relationships. I'm still friends with guys that I've known since first grade. We have very tight relationships. And then in the Army, you know, in Special Forces, you're on these very small teams and just these extreme bonds that are just unbreakable. These guys, I'm moving next week. One of the guys from my team is driving here from Colorado because he's got a big truck to help me move. And that's something that you just can't find anywhere else in life, and it's very tough. You know, I find veterans get back, and, you know, there's a couple things they look for. One, you don't want to leave the Army and do something that doesn't matter. You don't want to leave the Army and go pump gas at a gas station. You want to do something that's going to make a difference in the world. But also, you know, it's very hard to realize that nobody you ever meet for the rest of your life will have a bond as tight as the brothers you had in the military, and especially the ones you had in combat. There is nobody. I went from, you know, being in the Army, being very conservative. You know, I grew up in Texas, and then I went to, you know, Georgia for infantry basic training, North Carolina for special forces training, Germany, Colorado. Now I live in Southern California, where not only do I not have my Army guys around me, but most of the people here are douchebags. And so there's just like there's no people that I could ever. I've got some really great people that I've met, but it's like 1 out of 1,000 that I meet here that I ever would look at and go, I can probably trust you, you know. But still, nobody that I could go, you know, if somebody was trying to kill you, I know you'd take a bullet for me. Or if we were in an issue and somebody was shooting at us, I could go, hey man, you take right, I'm gonna take left. Let's go get this guy. There's not a whole lot of people I've met here that I could trust that would work.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And that's what I found to be one of the biggest obstacles to readjustment into the civilian world again. I was 7 years on active duty, and it was such a huge loss. I didn't even know it was happening when it happened. And you're right, you see the whole world as a bunch of frivolous, mindless morons, and yet the truth is that I'm trying to learn this. Is that trust is a gift I give to other people, and I got to assume that there's some part of their life that is kind of like my life, even though they've never been to a war. There's some part of their life that they've had to struggle, they've had to lose something, and maybe we can relate on that level playing field. But that's very well said. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know, Dave. There are a lot of morons out there. I just like that. I had that same idea where for a while I went, maybe it's just me. No, there's a lot of stupid people out there, especially here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. But that's another thing. And you know, I want to touch back, and if this isn't too difficult for you, you know, there's something that you were talking about that, you know, it's pretty important to me right now, and that's, you know, this common thread that we're seeing quite a bit in the military. You know, it's one of the reasons that I wrote my book, Love Me When I'm Gone, was because there's this huge thing with divorce in the military and bad relationships. And, you know, I know Joe had the same thing where he came back from Iraq and got divorced, and you're a chaplain, you came back from Iraq and got divorced. I did Iraq and Afghanistan and Africa, and, you know, 5 years later, now I'm going through a divorce. I talked to one of the guys from my old team. He said 5 of his buddies are now going through a divorce that were all SF guys. What is it? Is it I mean, because you're right. You're changed. We're a changed person. We can't. Is it us? Is it that we can't stand being with a woman that maybe doesn't see things like we do, or is it the woman can't put up with the changed person that we come back as, with the hypervigilance? Because I'm sure you, as a chaplain, you have to do a lot of pre-divorce or marriage counseling. So, what is it, man? I honestly don't know, because I don't know. But it is. It's like an epidemic in the military. And is there a common thread that you see to being a reason behind why this is?
Yeah, a requirement.
Yeah. In order to be a good soldier, you have to be divorced.
Well, there used to be this joke: to be a Green Beret, you need a Harley, you need the SF ring, Oakley, you need 3.
And really, a relationship breakup of any kind, whether it's a girlfriend or just a marriage, they often make fairly decent soldiers for short time, because they don't really give a shit about anything. They want to hurt somebody, and they want to have a building time. Then it catches up, become me. Certainly, I went through that. I think that combat. In order to deal with combat, in order to deal with the fact that you're prey and you're also a predator, you have to be a little bit both in combat. You have to be able to numb yourself to the thought of your own death, because all kinds of stuff happens all the time that you can't expect. And then you have to be able to kill. You have to be ready to kill and be part of that. Be a predator. You have to be out there hunting and looking, and the changes people, I think, produces a cocktail of personality traits. I don't know if that's the right word, but that make intimate relationships really difficult, because we're very numb. We don't feel much, and we know how to turn off our feelings like a switch.
Mm-hmm.
We don't trust anybody, and we see the world as a threat. And if we see the world as a threat, then how can that person that loves us the most, that also challenges us? I mean, I've been married for 10 months now, and marriage can be challenging because our spouse. Oh, that's why we get with them. That's why we marry them, because they challenge us on a deep level. And when we see the world as a threat, especially a person that is challenging us the most, times that just destroys the relationship, like pouring just boiling water over everything, or cold water, really. And that whole idea of divorce just is a recognition of a broken relationship. And divorce is a lot like suicide too. It's a quick decision, or a drastic decision, to solve a problem that's really difficult to solve. Because everybody I know that killed themselves had a really complicated problem. Now, it wasn't unsolvable, but in the moment, it really felt overwhelming, and that was a way to react. And certainly with a broken marriage that's going through problems, divorce seems like the only way out. And it's pretty easy to do, especially when you're feeling numb and distant, and for men and women. But I think it's part of our history in the military. The first chaplain that landed on the shores of America with an exploration party in the 1500s was the only thing we know about him is that he had sued a guy back in England for sleeping with his wife. He had sued somebody. So he had some relationship problems, and he booked a voyage to America. So this stuff has been going on for a long time, and I think warriors need to realize that this is part of the struggle that we have, and I don't think divorce is always the worst thing in the world. I think it is often just a recognition of something that broke a long time ago.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing for me that really kind of got me, and I'm still trying to deal with and make sense out of, is that the whole idea of PTSD. Like, I left the military to marry my wife. We were dating for a while, and she said, "I'm not going to marry a Green Beret. You got to get out if you want to get married." So I left. We got married. I got out of the Army. We got married. And so she kind of knew that she had signed on to this, and her dad had been in Taiwanese Special Forces, so she kind of knew what that entailed. And I'm a spokesman for USA Cares, a big veterans charity. And so she's spoken with me at events, and she's done radio shows with me talking about, living with someone with PTSD and all that stuff. And so that's where it kind of like got me, like, because that's, in the divorce decree, that was a big thing she wrote. He's a former Green Beret with PTSD and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, but you knew you signed on for that. And so there's that kind of, that idea that, like, it feels like it's almost traitorous, right? Like, I left the military for you to do this. You agreed that you did it. You've spoken on a national level with me about what it takes to deal with this, and now you're checking out. It feels to me like it's almost like a traitor, like somebody that kind of, I thought it was the one person in the world I could trust, and that was, the big thing I'm dealing with is it me? Is it her? I know I'm an asshole, but am I that much of an asshole, really? Because everybody else seems to love me.
Yeah, you know what? I was the same way. My marriage ended with infidelity, and we're friends now. It took a long time, but afterwards I was like, okay, I went from being the victim to being the villain in the way I handled it, and it just, I turned into the person like, okay, we were going to try to fix it, then I turned into the person where she walked away from me because it became such, and it consumed me. It's all I thought about all day, every day, and it was dragging me down, and I don't know if we could have or could have not gotten past it, but we didn't, and like I said, it consumed me to where I guess I looked not innocent, but go from having people understand and sympathize for you to looking at you and like, maybe there's a reason why she cheated on you. And, I mean, I handled it, the complete wrong way. And, but yeah, it's crazy, like my story, your story, Rob's story, not very unique. Maybe Rob's a little bit because he had a different color beret. But I've talked to so many soldiers, male and female, and it's just like the stories just constantly repeat itself, and I think my fear was not being able to control the situation. I'm a control freak, I have to have an answer for everything. I've been an NCO for...
And you have to have it now.
Yeah, I've been an NCO for 9 years now. And it's just like I'm supposed to have the answer for this. I didn't. It was weird. I didn't even have the answers to comfort myself. And so I think that's what did me in, was the losing control and knowing you're losing control. It's one thing if it's new to you. It's like, wait, I lost control, but the whole time it's like, yeah, this is a hole I'm falling down fast.
Yeah, and then as men, you kind of
there's that idea. I read about this a little bit in the book, that I realized that was a mammal. Like when I had the feelings after infidelity, were the kind of feelings people get in combat, of that adrenaline rush and rage where, I just never felt before. And suddenly we're not living in a rational existence anymore. We're living in really one of the lower, if you will, one of the more, like a lion or something. I mean, a lion goes crazy when it goes into combat, and so does humans. And we have this mind that tells us, be nice to people, treat people, take that lid off, and just let the pot boil over. But the problem is when you become home, the lid isn't put back on, and that thin veneer of relation covers all of humanity. It just doesn't exist really for warriors the way it does for everyone else. In the relationships and the places that gets expressed, because again, we're not acting like people. We're acting like gods. Because in that, you're a god. You can kill and save life, and you can do amazing things. And so we come back from, and we're actually fairly pathetic spouses many times, and we're not very good. We hear things. Our wife says to us, "You're not a good husband," and we believe it. Or you're a crazy Green Beret, or you're a crazy soldier. Or we believe that as if that's the whole answer to everything. Because we're actually very emotionally fragile when it comes to direct criticism on our person.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
And
from
but
the
listen,
one
the only
person.
thing. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
We're all talking over each other. And well, that's the thing, and it's coming from the one person that you're supposed to be able to open up. Because you're right, around everybody else in your life, when you are a Green Beret, or even like for me, as a former Green Beret author that's has to go out and talk about this and do all these different things, you have to put on this kind of veneer. You got to put on this armor almost of presenting that image. And the only time in your life you're allowed to take that armor off is when you're at home and you're around your family and the people you love the most. And so when that criticism is coming from those very people that you're supposed to be able to take your armor off around, it's the only time that criticism can really get you and penetrate, and it hits the hardest. And I think that's where it got me, because for me, everybody else in my life is extremely supportive, and it's crazy. I still have guys that were on my team 10 years ago that will call me for medical advice for the kids before they go to the doctor. But my wife would not listen to a single piece of advice from me because I was a moron in her mind, even though I was an 18 I was one of the best trained, medical professionals you could ever have. She would not listen to a piece of my advice. For business, everybody else will call me. I have a lot of friends that are small business owners. They would call me for tips and just life tips. I have a lot of people look for me for life tips, but the one person that was supposed to, support and listen to me would just not listen to anything that I said. And that's where it hits the hardest, especially for a soldier. You come back from war where you have a squad or a platoon or maybe even a company, hey, we're going to go take this hill, or we got to go clear this village. Here's how we're going to do it. Here's what you're going to do. Here's going to take it. And no questions, no guff. They just go. And then you get home, and all you get is, why the hell are your socks in this hamper? They're supposed to be in that hamper, and you're not supposed to do this, and why don't you do that? And you're such an idiot, and you're a slob. And you're like, don't you realize who I am? Right?
Trust me, I'm the same way. I've been a mechanic in the Army for quite some time. The only thing I was killing and saving were vehicles in the motor pool, and I killed more of them than I saved. But yeah, the same thing. I'd come back, and my ex would, what are you doing? I got to take the car to the shop. I am a mechanic. Yeah, no. So I understand. I was the 18 Delta of vehicles. Highly trained vehicle doctor, and yeah, I couldn't even work on my own patients in my own garage. I'm watching them like, yep, Pep Boys trumps me again. Awesome.
I can also attest that my spiritual counsel and marriage counseling skills were not appreciated either when I was my ex-wife. But, I mean, my heart just breaks too, because it's like this problem is part of our existence, and it's I've read your book, Rob, and that's the dominant theme of your book, is this relationship with this woman. I mean, this is the theme of it that runs through the whole thing. It's the guiding star. It's it's in that mythic realm of existence for me. As I read it, I thought, boy, this relationship it means everything. It's the whole universe. And boy, when that one part of the universe falls apart, everything falls apart. I know that's true for me. And
yeah, but look at him now. He was on national TV today, sparkly, with a great head of hair.
Well, and that's, what? So, but that's, I tell you what, because that, you're right, Dave. Like, it was, because we've known each other since high school. It was a huge part of my existence. And thank you for reading the book. And man, I'd love a 5-star review on Amazon. But that was, you're right, it was. And so a lot of people, I haven't been public. Actually, this is the first time I've ever publicly said that we were getting divorced. I just don't, I haven't. I just haven't put it out there at all. And I went MIA for like 2 months, just went off the grid, man. I wasn't communicating with anybody. I was missing a lot of shows. Like, I had a book that was, my second book was supposed to be out 4th of July. I couldn't even communicate. I couldn't even talk to my dad. He came here for a month, and I would just sit on the couch and stare at the wall. I was gone. And then I went to a thing for work like 2 weeks ago. I went to a leadership development thing in Santa Barbara. I don't know what it was. I was sitting there eating lunch, and I put on some pounds since the Army, man. I love eating. I didn't eat. I would eat like maybe a half a sandwich a day for about 2 months. I was out. I mean, I was just done, man. And I was sitting at this thing in Santa Barbara, eating just taking a bite of a BLT or something, a club sandwich. Love club sandwiches. And I was looking out the window, gorgeous. I mean, absolutely just like spectacular Santa Barbara day, perfect weather, clouds, oceans, people playing around. And I was at a table. I work with a lot of just gorgeous women. I mean, there's mostly men in my profession. I'm a financial advisor. but the women are just drop dead gorgeous. And I was sitting at this table with like 8 just beautiful women that were, I've known them 7 months, and as soon as I met them and they found out that I was an author, they all bought my book. They read my book immediately. They all said, "Wow, great job, that's amazing." And they started talking about it when we were at this thing, and that was the first time I realized, like, I wrote an entire book about Cindy. She's the only person in my life that never said good job. Like, congratulations, you worked a full-time job, commuted 4 hours a day, and wrote and published a book. Like, good job. Most people can't do that when they're not working. She's the only person in my life that never read the book and never said good job and never said thank you. And every one of these gorgeous women that I've known less than a year, immediately they go out there, like everybody else in my life. They go, "Oh, this guy's on to something." They read it. They said, "Congratulations." That was the first time in my life I sat there and just went, "You know what? Fuck her. I'm better off without her." And that, like, immediately, as soon as my brain said that, I was like, "Oh, you know what? I'm kind of hungry. I should finish this sandwich. Can I get another bowl of soup? Can I eat some more?" And I've been fully functional again. It's
See what
amazing.
bacon does? That's bacon. That's the work of bacon, right?
Baby. Bacon and beautiful women. And that's all you need in life. That's really all you need in life.
On this episode of the He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Bacon is the official sponsor of the radio.
Vets on Media this week is brought to you by Bacon! Yeah, but that, I tell you what, it really was like an elephant just got off my chest, man. It really changed my entire outlook. And, that's, unfortunately, my kids are, I mean, not unfortunately, but my kids are still, they're the only thing in my life. They're the only thing that matters to me. I only get to see them once a week now. But I just make sure that, like, 4 hours that I get to see them is the best 4 hours of their week, because I know it's the best 4 hours of my week. And it was pretty cool. But it really killed me, because her mom is here, and she's staying there and taking care of the kids because she can't take care of the kids on her own. She's just not like that. But, I sent her mom all these text messages. "Hey, I'm going to be on national television this morning. Can you please make sure the kids watch?" I was so pumped. I told Eric about it. I told everybody about it. And we got there today. You wouldn't let him watch me on Fox. And you're like, God, what is wrong with this woman? Like, those are my kids. Why can't she be supportive of me in any bit? And it just further solidifies that, like, you know what? I know it's not me. It's you. Like, I know I have issues. I'm not an amazing guy. I got problems of my own, but it's one of those things where I finally had to go. Yeah, I probably am better without her, because she would drag me down to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, I liked what you said, because to me that highlights that theme of failure, that divorce equals failure. And when you feel failure, I mean, for veterans, the Army for me was a honor-shame society. When you had honor, you had all of it. You were getting the award, you were the honored one. And when I got shame, it was, you're no good, you're a disaster, you're going to kill us all, you're at the bottom of the barrel. And so we live in between those two extremes all the time. And divorce is part of that failure feeling, like you're shamed now. I can see why I retreated too. You retreat, you get nauseous. It's like, I can't eat, I can't sleep. And that I'm a failure feeling, and yet the truth is it's not equal failure at all. And that's so exciting to hear you emerge from that and say, hey, this part of my life might not be functioning properly or working right, but these other parts are, and I'm going to keep doing the stuff I know how to do, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, and in my case, it was a little bit differently. We knew it was over, and the person that actually snapped me out of it wasn't a bacon sandwich and a nice Santa Barbara day. I was in central Wisconsin. It looked like purgatory. Everything was actually I was drinking. Yeah, I was drinking heavily, and just drinking a lot and doing what a newly single person does when they drink a lot. Really start to bomb at work and really be fun at the bars. It was actually my ex is the one that's like, listen, you're a great person. I don't want to take our child away from you. You really got to snap out of it. And that's what snapped me out of it, was the person that had a hand in putting me there was the person that pulled me back. And we're friends. God, yeah, listen, Dave, pray for anybody she she spends the rest of her life with, because, hey, man, Rob and I are going to have a new co-host in a couple of years if that's the case. But, you know, it was, as much as I hated her at a certain point, we grew to respect and, you know, and be friends. It took a lot. Now she's a great friend of mine. And I know it's not extremely common after a split up like that, but we just kind of, we looked at the world and it's like, you know, there's worse things out there. And we procreated, we had this wonderful child. Let's be a great, you know, structure for her. So. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what men do. That's what warriors do. They go back into the fight. And, you know, there's no more stressful situation than going to a meeting where you decide how many times a week you see your kids with your ex-wife or your soon-to-be ex-wife. There's no more stressful event. I'd much rather go back to Baghdad than go to an event like that. And when you're divorced and you're sharing child custody and all those things, we have those events like a couple times a week or a month where you're just feeling all those feelings, and that's something I don't like to feel. And yet that's the place where we've got to be warriors and go back into that fight, not with weapons blazing, but really with some discipline and some, you know, respect. Like you said, respect is the key to see sort of a vision maybe of the future. It's 30, 50, 100 years from now around the table with Jesus. They're through some of those meetings right now.
Do we lose you, Dave?
No, I'm there. I stopped. I kept talking, so I stopped. Yeah.
Yeah, you cut out for a minute there. I think we got a bad connection somewhere.
It's LA. Just, yeah, cell phones are horrible in LA.
I'm right by the Pacific Ocean, so who knows? There might be some offshore signals coming in.
Another conspiracy. It's that Japanese waste that's coming your way right now.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I noticed there were these strange things coming out of the water, going back down. They might have been porpoises or sea lions, but they might have been submarines.
No, those are illegals, Dave.
No, it's an indigenous species of Southern California. It's the insane douchebag liberal. They live at the bottom of the ocean. They come out to feed at night. They smell the conservative nearby. They're coming out to feed.
For my loving hippie family that lives in Southern California in Ventura, they're not talking. Rob's not talking to you guys, all right?
I hope they're listening. I hope they know I was at the Fox News station in Los Angeles this morning, and I ate a baby and burned a poor person on my way in. Sorry.
I love about
all I hear was Dave, but that's something I love. I'm like, whoa.
Something I love is being a veteran because it spans the political spectrum. Being a veteran to me is not it's a human issue. It's not a left issue, a right issue. Because every veteran falls on the political spectrum somewhere, and rarely ever in a predictable place. But the truth is that, you know, caring for veterans and, you know, the work that Rob does and you do, Silent J, and the stuff I do, this is something that spans all the views. And that's why I think it's a timely subject to talk about. How do veterans, you know, negotiate relationships in the world after combat? How do we function? I mean, these are not hardly political issues. They're
right. Before we wrap things up, Dave, like I said, somebody asked. Oh, Dave, it was you when you asked, like, how do you think the conversation's going to go? I'm like, a Green Beret, an Army chaplain, and an Army mechanic. It's going to go great. It's going to go great, sir.
It's gone well. It's been great.
Next time we need to do this over whiskey. Although I quit drinking, so maybe in a couple of years. But yeah. No politics, no religion. I don't think we'll have anything to talk about.
I'm drinking Voss water, so I'm
drinking black coffee.
I put it for Ralph Nader. Whatever.
Yeah, you're right. And so, you know, we've touched pretty heavily on that idea of the big D. You know, because that is something that really, you know, when you're talking about military guys, it's a very important part of the military today. And so everybody that's listening to this, you know, whether it be through Google Hangouts or iTunes or vetsonmedia.com or the Vets on Media radio feed, you're either a veteran or you know a veteran or somehow affiliated with veterans. It's a very big thing. And one of the most important things, my stepmom is a counselor. I come from a very long line of military guys. Everybody in my family is military at some point, whether it be for a short term or whether it be for a career. But as divorce is a huge part of post-combat, post-9/11 military, one of the most important things, and this is, you know, again, probably the thing that helped me realize that I needed to move on, was not drinking anymore. And Joe, you touched on this, and Dave, you know, I think it's a thing that we all kind of go through, because you're going through the lowest point of your life, and you just, like you said, want to numb yourself, and you want to make it stop, and just, you know, I want to feel anything more than this, even if it's puking at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'd want to feel something other than this, and that's the worst thing you can do. So, if anybody's out there and you got a veteran or active military or anything that's either going through a divorce or is recently divorced or is still having trouble with a divorce, keep them off the sauce. That is a big thing, and I can tell you personally, I haven't had a drink in about 2 months now, but when it first started going on, I was hitting the sauce pretty rough, man, and it's the worst thing you can do. It really is. You know, again, you just want to numb yourself and make everything go away, but at the end of the day, it just makes problems so much worse. And like, you know, Jay was saying, it can make you start going from being the victim to being the problem, just by the actions, the inhibitions that it takes away, and allows you to send mean text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning, or phone calls, or whatever stupid stuff you may end up doing. There's a lot of emotions going through you, and alcohol, you know, instead of that part of your brain that goes, hey, that's a dumb idea, maybe you should stop thinking about it, alcohol goes, I'm driving, and it just allows you to do this stupid stuff, and it doesn't let you think clearly, and you know, your health goes to shit, and your reasoning goes to shit. So anybody out there, long story short, if you got somebody that's going through this or any other issues with post-deployment, PTSD, combat, nightmares, whatever it may be a friend or family or lover or whatever it may be, but just make sure that they're not abusing alcohol, because it really will kill you. And this is coming from a guy where a large portion of my book was talking about how much I love German beer. And believe me, I'm from Texas. I love whiskey. But when you're in that kind of emotional state, when something's going on, alcohol is probably the worst thing that you can have. At least, you know, moderation, a drink or two, whatever. But, you know, 5, 6, drinking a half a bottle of whiskey or a bottle of wine or whatever at night, it's not going to lead to anything good. So that was, yeah, that's my 2 cents. Joe, you got anything to add about that?
No, that's I'm good with that. I was the same way. I don't drink as much as I used to. I drank last night for semi-socially at a kind of a party with some of my guys before I leave here. I had a couple drinks and I was done with it. I was like, I'm so done with this, you know. And yeah, I woke up this morning. I'm like, wow, I don't have a hangover. And then I go and sit down and Joel Osteen's on TV, and I'm like, so I've just looked. Wow, that's a big church.
This is not the Filipino.
Don't make me jealous here.
That's a really big. I'm sorry. That's a really big church. And he was talking, and I don't listen. I'm not privy to televangelism. Just not my cup of tea. Maybe being from New York, you know, it's just kind of not my thing. But he said something that was kind of intriguing through his Joan Rivers smile. The guy can't stop smiling. I think he had some work done. I think he had some work done, because nobody smiles that much when you talk. I tried, trust me, I tried. But he was saying that you don't have. There's never a problem that you're given that you already can't get through. You know, like every problem that goes your way, there's already a path to get through it. So I was kind of like, yeah. And I was thinking, I'm like, not even on the you know, the spiritual aspect, but just, you know, as a human being, everything I've ever faced, there's a way to get out of it, you know, in a positive manner. I mean, there's always plenty of negative ways you could get out of something, but you just, you know, put more crap on your lap. But I really thought about it. I'm like, yeah, there's really everything I've faced. There's kind of like that way to get through it. Sometimes it's a little bit longer than others, but yeah, I was kind of impressed. It was the first time I ever heard that guy talk. So, yeah. And I'm sure Dave. Listen, Dave. Not everybody needs the 70,000 dome to have a congregation. I'm sure you're doing. Be proud of what you got, Dave.
I am very much, and that's a really good message, because at that moment it sounds like it gave you hope and said, "Hey, I can do this. I can make it." And that's what we need to hear from friends, from pulpits, from preachers, from teachers, from advocates for veterans. Just that message of hope that the valley is really dark and it's really deep, but there's a light that's coming, and it's not the train at the end of the tunnel, it's the light at the end of the tunnel, and we're going to move through it and get through it. And I think for most people, the first point of that is that in boot camp or basic training, when you first arrive, or whatever it is, the first initial just shock and awe of what you've gotten into, and then a couple weeks later, it's like, hey, I made it. A couple months later, hey, that's problems are like that in life. And then we're ready to really live on the other side of it. Yep. Good word.
You know, there's a great quote that I like that I think is very important. There's a great quote that I like that I think is very pertinent to that in this conversation. That's the idea that it always gets darkest just before first light. You know, and that's truth. You know, anytime you see and you feel like the walls are closing in, it's just getting dark and there's no way up. It always gets really bad before it gets really good. And I had that point for 2 months. I just thought there was no way out. I didn't know what to do. And in the last month, I've had a lot of amazing things happen. You know, last week I made more money in the first 3 days of the week than I made the entire year before. I was on national television. You know, there's a lot of great stuff that comes. You just got to come to the realization that life will get better. But again, whether you think you're going to succeed or think you're going to fail, you're right either way, right? It's all about the mind. It's all about what you put into it. So just keep a positive mind, keep yourself going, and this too shall end, whatever it may be. So the author, again, is David W. Peters, newest member of the Tactical 16 family. So he's a chaplain. We welcome you, brother. Thank you very much for coming on here. The book is Death Letter, God, Sex, and War. It's available on Amazon. If you are following us live on Google Hangouts, you can check the link on the Showcase app and click right through to it. If you're listening to us on iTunes, Podbean, or vetsonmedia.com, make sure you take yourself over to Amazon. Better yet, go to www.lovemewhenimgone.com, click through the Amazon links there, and check out Death Letter, God, Sex, and War, available in Kindle right now. I'm sure it's doing really well. It's got 5-star reviews, and that one jerk that's a 4-star, you know he's a chaplain, so you're going to burn in hell for that 4-star. But
that's another chaplain. He's like, you know what? The guy took the title of my book. He's only getting 4 stars.
Yeah, but so just be warned. God's watching you. Make sure you click that 5 stars, or you're gonna have to answer that when you get up to the pearly gates. Again, the book is Death Letter, God, Sex, and War, from our new Tactical 16 brother, David W. Peters. Dave, thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for opening up and talking about all these really important things, because it's something that I think people need to hear, man. I feel like I just spent an entire week getting right with Jesus, so that's a very good thing. Thank you very much, brother.
It's been an honor to be with both you gentlemen here, and I wish you well as you continue to help our community heal.
Yeah, and I'm doing one more Tactical 16 radio show before I go on terminal leave, which is in 13 days, and I still don't have orders, but I'm trying to see the positive light. Don't pray for me, Dave. Pray for the Army, because when I get to Fort Knox within these next 2 weeks, something bad might happen. Not like that. Never mind. I'm just gonna yell. I'm gonna be angry. I'm gonna yell.
Do a lot of push-ups. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a lot of push-ups at the front gate. I'm like, I just gotta get rid of any fight I have in me.
Yes. Good idea. I've done myself a few times.
Yeah, but I gotta get you on Tactical 16 Radio and talk a little bit more about the book, and just because I want to. So yeah, go to Amazon, go to lovemewhenimgone.com, click on the Amazon banner, and it's Death Letter, God, Sex, War. It's the ebook edition. The length is about 97 pages and great reviews. The author is David W. Peters. Don't confuse it with anybody else. So yeah, book looks great. I can't wait to read this after I'm done with my book.
Awesome.
And thanks to the whole Tactical 16 team, Eric Shaw and Brian Dolch who did the cover design, Kristen Shaw, and just want to thank them for giving me the opportunity to become an author. And thanks to you, Silent Jay, and Rob for my first radio.
Oh, this is your first one? It's pretty good for the first one, man. It's the first one's usually got to knock some rust off. That one's pretty. You did a pretty good job for your first one, man. I see some great ones ahead of you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thanks for being on, and I'll talk to you. I'll get a hold of you tomorrow about some stuff.
All right, take care. Good night.
All right.
See you, Dave. So I know at the end of our show we usually do the best and worst.
That was.
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Maybe it's been my connection that was jacking up. Okay. So I was gonna say.
I don't know. It might be.
You know, we usually do the best and worst.
And tornado warning.
Oh, for you guys?
Yeah, there's tornado warnings where I am right now, so that's why I'm in the basement.
Well, it rained. We got the 1 day of rain for the year in Los Angeles today, so it could be here today. Since he and I are both here, that could definitely be the one jacking it up. But, you know, we have some. I know at the end of every episode we like to do the best and worst tweets for humanity of the week. And I just saw something on Facebook. You know, talking to Dave kind of brought this up, and you know, it's a big thing for me. This is more of a positive, inspirational thing. But I saw somebody post something on Facebook today that said, "I'd rather be tired than broke." Right? And I think that's a really good one because I work. You know, I've been doing 18-hour days lately. You know, I took that 2 months off, and since I got back, it's just like full force, going 100 miles an hour as fast as I can. Because again, my goal is to just make my kids rich. I don't give a shit about me. Like, I don't really spend a lot of money. I'm very low maintenance. But I want my kids to never really want for anything. So I work my ass off. And that's I don't know, I wish more people were like that. But that's my thing. You know, people ask me, like, I'll leave the office at like 2 a.m. and I'll be back at 8. And they'll be like, how don't you sleep? I'm like, not really. I need to make money. I've got, if there's somebody willing to give me money, if there's something I can do to make money or further my career or do something to make sure that my kids are better off when they get out of college than I was, then I'm going to do it. And I don't care. I'll be tired until they're set. And the day they're set, I'm taking a long nap. But up to that point, like, I don't care. I'm going. So I think that's a really positive thing. Like, being tired is just a crutch, right? Just go. Just go. And that's, you know, other people sleep, we make progress, right? So just keep that in the back of your mind. How uncomfortable is being tired really, right? Versus what it could bring you. Just doing a little bit extra work and making a little extra money or doing whatever you got to do to get yourself a little bit further forward. Just do it. Just do it. So, that's my little thing. Do you have any best, worst tweets for humanity, Joe?
Well, I found out on this. I love following. It's called What the F Facts on Twitter, and I found out that, you know, the pink insulation for your homes.
Yeah.
It's made by the same way they make cotton candy. So.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I'm never eating cotton candy again.
And it looks just like cotton candy. I wonder they have to have had a crazy mix-up at that plant every once in a while because it looks exactly like it too.
Yeah, but I had one before. Man, there's just fiberglass insulation and cotton candy use an almost identical production method. That's really gross because when I was a little kid, I was confused on why I couldn't eat that stuff. Seriously. And then I remember touching it and not ever wanting to touch it again.
I had a friend in high school, my buddy Ben, had a party, this huge blowout party at his house. His parents went out of town, just like I was a DJ in college, and So I actually brought my whole rig. I DJ'd. I mean, we had hundreds and hundreds of people. Somebody called the cops before the kegs were even tapped. I mean, we had a bunch of people there that, you were drinking a little bit, but just cops came and swarmed the place immediately. So a friend of mine, who's a big guy, who's one of our linemen playing football, he goes upstairs into the attic, and he was trying to hide in the attic as the cops were, downstairs busting people. And he takes a misstep and steps, instead of on the beams, right on the insulation and fell right through the floor. And he was just like, you looked at him, and he had gone, to do that, you have to go through the layer of insulation to go through the ceiling. Mm-hmm. And he just all of a sudden thud, like lands on the floor, just covered in insulation. And he itched for days. I mean, he had this shit like in his shirt and like all over his body, and he was just so miserable. And they made him go to jail. So they took him to jail before he had actually gotten a chance to get all this stuff out of him. So, yeah. I don't know what the moral of that story is, but I'm not going to eat cotton candy either.
No, yeah, and well, seeing as how we do best and worst tweets, I tell you what, not a best tweet, but probably I think one of the best people to follow on Twitter, if you're a veteran, is Montel Williams.
Yeah.
How your football buddy, fell through, a floor or ceiling leading into Montel Williams, I have no idea, but. Sure. Yeah, mysterious ways, right? That'd just be the theme for the night. Everything's mysterious.
There we go. So we'll end on the idea of mystery and mysteriousness for the show. So everybody, please remember, if you're listening to this show, there's a lot of different places you can get it. You may be getting this on Google Hangouts and following us live. For those of you getting it anywhere else, iTunes, Podbean, VetsOnMedia.com, YouTube. Remember, we record Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're on Gmail, that means you have a Google Plus account. Just go to your Google Plus account and look up Cinemass with Rob and Silent J. You can watch this show live. You can actually submit questions as we're recording. You can kind of help us go along with the show, and you can take part in it, which is a little bit cool. Otherwise, get it on YouTube, VetsOnMedia.com, iTunes, Podbean, anywhere else that's out there. So for those of you that are following us, we want to say thank you very much. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, follow our Facebook page, check out Tactical16.com, IronMike.com, MilitaryMediaMafia.com, and anything else? LoveMeWhenI'mGone.com. Buy Love Me When I'm Gone in the stores. Buy Death Letter, Sex, God, and Drugs. Right? Yeah. By David Peters, and a lot of other great Tactical 16 books that are out there. Lion in the Valley, Brave Rifles, of course. Love Me When I'm Gone. There's a lot of other great books out there by some great veteran authors under that Tactical 16 banner, so check out Tactical16.com to have a look at what all of those are. So, yeah, and on the Vets on Media side of things, go to VetsOnMedia.com, check out the radio listings, the show list, because they have another new addition to our family, I guess, and I think this is the third show that they've added or will be adding within the last month. So the roster is growing, and it's all veteran related hosts, co-hosts, topics, subjects, things of that nature. So yeah, check that out. Oh, and real quick before we go, you might see Silent J running around on a NFL stadium near you. No, I'm not going to be a tackling dummy, but I'm working with Vets on Media, and I might be covering some Buffalo Bills games this upcoming season. That's awesome. Yeah, and maybe some Sabres games and whatever else I could weasel my way into. So yeah, I'm just I'm the pro bono professional. Remember that. Yeah. Yeah, you know what? Listen, the next time somebody from McDonald's bitches about their pay, I've been doing this entertainment stuff for 4 years, and I haven't gotten a dime. So, Adam, I want minimum wage. That's how it goes. All right, so everybody from Center Mass with Rob and Silent J, I'd like to say thank you for following us tonight. Yeah. From wherever you're listening to us, I am Rob. I am Silent J. And I just wanted to say, make sure you stand your ground. Only fire when fire upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. We're out, bitches.